Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on? I'm doing great. We just finished recording our Patreon episode that was just a total experiment that I think, we'll see how well it does, but, had a fun time doing it.
Yep.
It was super fun, and, I like that we're trying new things.
Yeah, it was a fun one. We recorded for this month's Patreon Early Access, the one that's going up basically the same day as this episode. If you are a Patreon supporter, you can basically see a podcast in quotes that's basically more Let's Play than podcast, but it's Cameron and I, Cameron walking me through kind of a reintroduction to Final Fantasy XIV. I did dive into the game a couple years ago and gave it a shot and then fell off. And with all the hype and buzz around Endwalker, as well as just a ton of friends and peers in the industry have started getting into Final Fantasy XIV in the last couple of years. I was like, all right, it's time. I'm ready to give it another shot. And knowing that I can, call on Cam to hop in and join me if I need some help in an adventure or some of those quests, I will feel less pressured about that this time around. So yeah, we basically did an hour and 15 minutes maybe of just kind of me creating a character and doing some of the first couple missions in the game. Cameron going super nerdy on some of his lore stuff, and then we kind of wrapped up with Cameron showing off a lot of his fun little mounts and outfits for his different classes and stuff like that. So check that out if you are one of our Patreon supporters. If not, that'll go live to everybody at the end of June. So still it's more or less evergreen kind of stuff if you care at all about Final Fantasy XIV online. But it's fun. I look forward to hopping back into that game a little bit more, especially once I wrap up here with Mass Effect. I don't have, it's basically I have Mass Effect and then Ratchet and Clank and then nothing really, probably until Deathloop, that I'm super interested in. So it'll be a nice game to kind of fall back into over the summer months. Will be Final Fantasy XIV. So check that out. It was a fun little, again, Let's Play / podcast. It probably doesn't, there are probably a few beats that are just silence, or it's just the game audio. So it's probably not going to be the most compelling podcast, and it probably works best as a video version. But go check that out. And I felt like it was okay to do that for the Patreon ones, because our patrons, admittedly, those episodes, even when they go public, don't get a ton of traction. So hopefully, if you are one of our Patreon supporters, hopefully it doesn't piss you off. But if it does, certainly let us know that feedback as well. Speaking of all of that, if you like what you hear, please remember to subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you are feeling generous, you can support us on Patreon. Again, as we said, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where you get early access to monthly bonus episodes like that one. And we want to give a thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon producers for this month: Pam Larson, Sherry Starkey, Teresa Wilkinson, and myself, Trevor Starkey. So we got a few things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to dive into kind of our thoughts on the pre-E3 bevy of trailers we got this week, including Far Cry 6, Dying Light 2, Horizon Forbidden West, and the Sonic 30th anniversary stuff. Also, I don't know if you watched the Dragon Quest one, but there was clearly some Dragon Quest things. So Dragon Quest 12 finally got revealed. Cam is going to give his updates on the latest Shadowbringers patch from Final Fantasy XIV, the last patch, basically, in the lead up to Endwalkers. Endwalkers or Endwalker? Is it singular?
Endwalker.
Endwalker, singular? Okay.
Shadowbringers, plural.
There you go.
Endwalker,
Yeah.
singular.
Heaven's Word, singular, but heavens being plural. And then Stormblood, singular. Yeah,
actually,
sure.
Heaven's Word, I believe, is possessive, not plural.
Yeah,
It's the ward of the heavens.
I thought it was heading towards the heavens.
So here's the thing: they play with that word like
Okay.
a motherfucker.
Okay.
Okay. There is literally an order called the Heaven's Word.
I mean, they're also playing pretty fast and loose with final in Final Fantasy. So
yeah, like it's like it's wild. I love it actually. Like the way that it's done because they use Heaven's Word as like a term for like heaven bound because they introduce flight in that as like a like travel mechanic. Like there's like the layers that Heaven's Word as an expansion has about that term Heaven's Word.
Okay,
is just bonkers.
All right,
extremely good.
We're also going to be giving any of our kind of like updated thoughts on Mass Effect, specifically with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, of course. And then I finished watching the Mighty Ducks Game Changers series on Disney Plus. The final episode of that wrapped up this week, so seems good a time as any to kind of give a broad overview of that. So let's kick it off, I guess. Cam, take it away with what you want to talk about with regard to the trailer reactions that we got this week. I know in particular you have some thoughts on one of them, so feel free to dive in there.
Let's hop right into this one. I am so goddamn tired of Far Cry. Far Cry 5 was one of the biggest disappointments for me on so many levels. So as somebody who like is a big fan of Far Cry 3, I'm an enormous fan of Far Cry 3. The way that Far Cry 3 took the approach of very colonial-based material, like Into the Heart of Darkness and other stuff, and turned it on its head to be anti-colonial and the idea of Into the Heart of Darkness is a rather modernly we look at it and we say, yeah, that was actually a pretty racist book. It was because it's about somebody like going into the heart of Africa and like seeing the dangers of like the uncivilized world. And what Far Cry 3 does is it takes you into that and then turns it on its head multiple times to then reflect back and show that actually all the evil is coming from like this colonial pursuit of resource and power and control. And the way that it does it through like an awesome sprawling game across that island, the multiple islands, like combat wise and everything in that game just make it so great that it's still one of my favorite games of all time. Far Cry 4 was a departure for several things. One being that you now are like, and this is what I think might be one of the worst things they ever did was they made it a silent protagonist. And like I think they lost track of like what made those games really great. But I digress. Far Cry 4 was fine. Like I would have preferred like there's enough going on in Far Cry 4 to like that speaks on the idea of revolution and like the nature of these characters who pagan men and other characters who are utilizing like whether you're using religion and culture to rally people around to have and like to control them, or you're using drugs and money and fascist control of the state to do it. Like it brings in a lot of like the gray areas between the two, which I loved, and loved the way they played with it. The way they played with narratives of expectations regarding like your main character's like family situation and like what brought them there and everything else. And then you take that and you also, it has like one of the best twist endings, which is if you just wait, which like you're given an instruction by the villain to wait.
The intro ending that you can get.
Yeah, the intro ending, which basically like solves all the problems. Without the need of having to like do anything. You basically are just like handed the ending, and it's potentially the best ending because like you don't have to deal with like the two forces massacring each other because yeah, it's great. I love that that willingness to do something like that and have that in that game. Far Cry 5 is where it really started to piss me off because even though you were a silent protagonist in Far Cry 4, you were still a character. Like, you still had a reason and purpose for being where you were. And the story was revolving around, like, who you were, your family's history that you had no knowledge of because it was hidden from you. And, like, there's a lot of stuff that they could have done better to, like give that a more, like, a better, like, narrative tapestry to that.
Mm-hmm.
But man, did they get the wrong lesson from Far Cry 4, because they doubled down on having an absolute nonsense blank slate doesn't matter character that you play. And then you also get them when they like I was so excited about it because growing up in Arizona, there are, how do I put this without like getting too in the weeds on this? The Western United States has a deep history of cults, ranging from the absolute wildest ones to not so like the difference between cult and regular religion is like razor thin at some point. So,
yeah, I remember one of my, let's say she was like one of my English teachers / my humanities teacher in high school. I think, was it Miss Roberts? I don't remember her name off the top of my head anymore, but she basically, like, she was fascinated and obsessed with vortexes in Sedona and stuff, and she would talk about the idea that in the 70s she was in a family that she eventually kind of moved on from, but it was like, oh, okay, you were in a cult, that's really weird. Thanks for sharing with all of us 16-year-olds.
Yeah. So you even have, like, in the 60s and 70s, you had these quote-unquote family units that were essentially cults, but for the most part, especially, and this is why most people didn't really like the Marilyn Manson being, like, the wild, crazy, cult leader that he was.
You mean Charles Manson?
Charles Manson. What did I say? Marilyn Manson? Yeah. Different scumbag, but whatever.
Yeah.
No, Charles Manson, the reason why most people, like, ignored his, like, quote-unquote family is because most of the time those people were pretty harmless, except to each other, and, like, the long-lasting damage between that. But, very much, like, there's been history of that in this, especially the Southwest. We were children, like, we were kids when Waco happened. I was 3 or 4 years old, and I was watching my parents, like, glued to the television watching Waco happen before ever, like, the entire world's eyes, like this cult compound getting raided by ATF and, like, the controversy around it, the way ATF basically caused the death of, like, dozens of men, women, and children, and, like, the fallout of all of that, and, like, the question of, like, well, they were a cult, right? And, like, all that stuff sprung up, and so being surrounded by it, like, there was also Warren Jeffs of the fundamentalist Mormons who was captured in my teenage years. He was finally arrested after being years of being on the run. The multiple police raids on and state agency raids on the fundamentalist, like, Mormon compounds, where, like, you just saw people in, like, homespun clothing, like they're from, like, the late 1800s, the way they're dressed, some of them. It's wild to see people like this. So when Ubisoft said it is taking place in Montana, we are talking about, like, America, and it's not lost that, like, this is the part of America that fought back real hard in 2016 and got Trump elected president. This is a massive thing, and apparently at E3, they didn't put this out in other places, but apparently at E3 that year when they announced it, they're like, we're not shying away from politics, and they made a big deal about that. But I was really looking forward to seeing this, like, what Ubisoft was going to tell about, like, American cult culture, and I was so disappointed that it was basically just nothing.
Yeah, it was the dumbest and simplest of tropes. Plus,
it was so bad.
Drugs.
It was drugs. Yeah, drugs, and, like, this person's like, he's like a televangelist. This other person's like a nature survivalist cult person. This person's like flower child cult family style, And then the main guy is like whatever. It's dumb and it's annoying, and like it doesn't play great, and it plays fine as far as like as a game goes, and there's like some cool stuff in it, but overarching, the story is such a massive disappointment.
Like so while you were kind of giving the preface on that, I was like, I know. So like back in my Trevor Trove days, I would do like, best of the year and worst of the year, or biggest disappointments or whatever. And because this game came out in 2018, I think I was probably like on a hiatus more or less from doing a lot of stuff with Trevor Trove. But I did find that it was on my most anticipated list in 2018. And so what I did was I had a comparison piece of like, let's look back at my most anticipated 2018 and how that all shook out, and then let's look ahead at my 2019 most anticipated. And it was my number one most anticipated game going into 2018. And my blurb here is, well, that was a complete misfire. I'll cover this more in an eventual write-up about top disappointments, which I think I just ended up never doing because I was like, you know what? There's enough negativity in the world. I don't want to add to it. But
that's fair.
But Far Cry 5 was ultimately one of my most forgettable experiences of 2018. I don't necessarily think it's a bad game. It just failed to live up to its potential on nearly every front. Left me feeling the opposite of God of War, and the blandness of this game will keep the upcoming Far Cry New Dawn and any future installment far away from my most anticipated list moving forward. I did end up playing Far Cry New Dawn because I picked it up on like super cheap sale, and like those games are fine for their like mindless running and gunning first person shooting, go like, take out all these compounds or whatever kinds of games. And I will say like New Dawn, I think makes Joseph Seed a more interesting character. Because it is a weird thing of like where it's a actual sequel to a Far Cry game, but he's still pretty like one note, and yeah, just so I fully appreciate that. And yeah, as we kind of touched on, like I'm largely in the same camp of like Ubisoft comes out and they do your Rainbow Six games or your Far Cries, and they have very clear political overtones to them, and then they always come out and say, we're not interested in making political statements. It's like, you are. So with Far Cry 6, you've basically created a fictionalized version of Cuba, but it's not you're not making political statements. It's you
like, oh my gosh.
Your Giancarlo Esposito character is basically like a Castro type of character, and you're going to be playing a guerrilla fighter. And they have in the trailer or in the reveal video, they talk about the idea of like guerrilla fantasy. And it's like, okay, so guerrilla and freedom fighters is a political thing. You said, you making your protagonist, that is a political statement. You can't just not be political. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
The line between terrorist and freedom fighter, oftentimes is razor thin and blurs the lines a lot. And
I mean, it's basically just which side of the attacks are you on? Like they think of themselves as freedom fighters, and the dictator is going to think of them as terrorists. So it's like,
well, yeah. It's there. I had a very very fascinating conversation about like the nature of terrorism a while back in a philosophy class that I took, and how like saying freedom fighters and terrorists are like the two sides of the same coin. Not exactly the same, basically it's like, you talk about like the IRA, like the Irish Republican Army, which is to Britain and to the larger world was a terrorist organization, but they were a liberation army for Ireland.
Yeah. And
what they did, like, now did the IRA later end up like doing a lot of terrorist activity? Yeah, they blew up cars and hurt people. But like that was. But I digress. So going back to this, though, I look at this and I say... just,
like, you mentioning that, I'm like, I remember, like, the first time I ever drank Guinness was because somebody bought me an Irish car bomb. And I'm like, oh, my God, what a terrible name for a drink. Like, yeah. Far Cry 6, their trailer came out. Far Cry 6,
it's like, don't get me wrong, I love Giancarlo Esposito. I think he's one of, like, the most phenomenal actors of our time. I would love to see him as a Far Cry villain. But you cannot put out a game that is that you are engaging in a quote unquote guerrilla fantasy, which also, what kind of god awful nonsense is that as a term, guerrilla fantasy? Like, you're getting to play out the fantasy of a guerrilla fighter. That's not a fantasy. That's that's a horrible thing to have to deal with and live through.
Yeah.
And just everything about Far Cry 6, from the reveal trailer to years ago to what we saw this week, was just one more note of cool. Okay, we're playing a guerrilla fighter. All right. So are we the leader of this movement? Are we who are we? You spend so much time talking about this person and then showing us gameplay that you don't talk about who we are involved in this. You say it's a fantasy. There was zero fantasy in Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5 was Cult and Cop Simulator 2018. Pretty much. Because, who were you? You were you were a recently hired sheriff's deputy.
Yeah.
That's it. That's not a fantasy. It's a shallow fantasy if it's anything. But if it is a fantasy. And then I'm seeing the same thing here. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter, people in our industry and in our sphere of influence and influencers who are people of color, who had a lot to say about what they were seeing and a lot to say about what they kind of view of the reactions that people were having in regards to it. And I recommend that if you follow, these people, check out what they have to say. But man, oh man, I'm just so you are talking about, especially right now when we are in one of the greatest political political and economic divides in our country, the United States history, much less in the world overall, in regards to things like income disparity, the failures of not failures, but the shortcomings of democratic representational government in dealing with the rise of fascism all around the world in several different governments and countries and continents. It's and you're doing this game. Yeah.
And it was the same with Far Cry 5, where it was you are releasing this game, which on the surface and how they proposed it wasn't even him as cult leader. It was very nationalistic kind of very
they've turned America into
a
religion. Yeah. They've turned the American nationalism into a religion, and that is what they're doing. And then it just fails to ever really put that into perspective in the game itself. It's we have this bold message, and we are going to backpedal the shit out of it.
Mm-hmm. We absolutely want to capitalize on the imagery that we're going to evoke out of this. But we don't want anybody to actually confront us and say we're actually taking a side on things or something like that. So yeah, it as a side tangent to this whole thing, there is also the conversation of Giancarlo Esposito, despite being a phenomenal actor, is not an actor of Latino heritage. He's he's what, Italian and Afro-American, right?
Well, I don't know if it's entirely accurate to say that his mom. So a big thing to note, especially in Southern African Americans, that because of Cuba and the Louisiana and a lot of the Creole influence, that there is he could technically possibly have some Latin heritage within his within the African American side of his family. That would not be unusual. But overall, he's from Copenhagen, Denmark. He was born and raised there.
Yeah.
His dad's a famous Italian actor. He's phenomenal. But the only reason you cast him as a Latin character is because he played Gus Fring in Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at. And it's always a conversation that is fascinating to me as somebody who did theater for many, many years, because I don't subscribe to the idea that you should only be able to play a role within a certain kind of set. I don't think you take it to the extreme of a Scarlett Johansson saying I should be able to play any role. But I think there's I think there is like opportunity there for actors of different ethnicities to still portray actors. Maybe, not don't make this a white guy, because that was like the weird thing with even staying in the Far Cry vein. Like having Troy Baker play Pagan Min was a weird choice.
Well, it came at a time when like
it's also it was at a time where we weren't having these conversations as much, but it still was a weird, like even at the time it was like, this is weird. Like, why is Troy playing a very Anglican looking person of Asian like nature?
And the thing is, in the initial like artwork that they were showing off and everything, everybody's like, "Huh, that guy looks an awful lot like Troy Baker." When it's actually the in-game thing, like it's very clear that that's an Asian person.
Oh yeah. But it didn't even look like Troy. It was, why does this guy
just look like a white dude?
Why does this guy look like white? Why does he have like the bleach blonde hair or whatever? Like what? And yeah, the game, gets a little bit more into like those decisions, but it was still weird.
Yeah, because Pagan Min is from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So he's multi-ethnic from Hong Kong.
Was he actually from Hong Kong, or was he from like a Ubisoft not Hong Kong version of Hong Kong?
No, he was from actual Hong Kong,
Okay.
if I recall the game. Like he was actually from there, and then was like he got brought into this country as an arms dealer, because that's like he was just an arms dealer, and then he got kind of involved in the political spectrum of the country, and then ended up taking it over.
Yep.
So
You are correct. Pagan Man, born in Hong Kong, based off of a Burmese ruler kind of thing. But anyway, it is another element to the conversation that a lot of people are having around Far Cry 6, and having an Italian-born African American Denmark like Dane play what is essentially a Cuban dictator is a weird call, but it's one that like Ubisoft does not have any interest in actually like confronting that conversation. It is, hey, he was really good as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad, so we're going to cast him as our bad guy in that archetype of kind of South American bad guy character. So yeah. I watched the trailer and stuff.
I can't find. I was just gonna say I can't find anything that says that his mom was anything but just African American from the South. So I think we're just gonna go play it on the safe side and say that he's just not Latino.
Yeah.
Two white guys on the internet probably shouldn't be the ones making that decision.
I'm weighing in to bring the voices that I've seen making comments about it.
Yes.
And not like, and admittedly, one of those voices is, a friend of the show and former That Nerdy Site contributor, Ben Bellevue. But it's also like Christian, also of That Nerdy Site, also has said that same kind of thing in the past. And so it's a conversation. I'm bringing it to highlight it as a, hey, like your mileage is going to vary with this if it's an issue or not for you. But it is a conversation around the game that Ubisoft will sweep under the rug, just like we're not interested in making this a political statement kind of thing. My take on it, the only way I will hop into Far Cry 6 is if I pick it up on sale and I'm looking for let me find a mindless podcasting kind of game, because that's what the Far Cry games for me are. Even going back to Far Cry 3, I remember picking that one up based on everybody talking about it. And I always talk about the Sephiroth-like nature of the Far Cry villains, in that they make a big splash and they're they are kind of like the face of the game, but you're doing so much random other nonsense in those games that they're not a huge part of your overall experience. They're part of the narrative, but the narrative in those games could probably take up an hour of story time, if you played just all the cutscenes together or something as an hour. And so Voss was that kind of thing where it's he has a couple iconic moments. Same with Pagan Min, same with Joseph Seed, but none of them are great standout characters.
I do not see Joseph Seed as having any serious standout moments.
I mean, he doesn't have any standout moments, but he is a presence in that
In the
game
sure.
through like.
But I mean,
his...
Pagan Min was so ever present because he literally would just like get on the radio and talk to you, and have these one-sided conversations where he's like, "Oh, RJ, I just like
Ajay, yeah.
like you, Ajay, you're just having like we're just having such a great time, or I'm having such a great time just talking to you." Ajay, you're just like you're destroying my bases. I'm just not a big fan of that. I'm gonna have to send my guys after you. Like, like try to survive, but and like so this like taunting kind of like weird like ethereal like disappointed parental figure like stood out way more. And then Vosh's like whole thing about like just always being one step ahead of you. What's the definition of insanity? Like when he thinks that he's killed you, but you're still alive. Like what's the definition of insanity? Like those moments make Vosh. I think Vosh is the biggest standout villain from the Far Cry genre.
Yeah,
or not genre, series.
But that's so again, like to pull my comparison there, like they have those moments, and even the Pagan Min ones, I would argue, are still a very small like element of that game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he'll hop on the radio for you. That keeps him in your mind even when he's not on screen in a cutscene. But he's still like not doing that on the millions of other things you're doing in that game. And so tying it back to Sephiroth, like Sephiroth has these iconic moments with Jenova or with, walking out of the Shinra mansion in flames and stuff like that. But like if you play through Final Fantasy VII, he's not in a lot of that game. A lot of that game, like he is a presence, but he like you're not interacting with him directly for most of that game. So that's what I think about when I think of those characters.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, like it has even Voss I didn't think was like that great of a character, but it has been basically downhill from Voss. So like this, Giancarlo Esposito, I have no doubt is going to be great and give a good performance, but I could also see it being like, oh, we've seen his introduction in the trailers and him talking to some kind of news reporter or something like that for an interview, and I would not be surprised if that's like 10% of his entire like input to the game, and a couple scenes between him and I think Danny is your character's name in this one, and yeah, so I expect it to be pretty much the same kind of thing of like he'll be a presence in the game and you'll see his like image everywhere because he is El Presidente or whatever, but he's like he probably did not show up for a ton of like on-set work for that, because that's just not what those games are about. Like, hey, just go and destroy a whole bunch of stuff, and eventually you'll get around to like the story missions again or something like that. But yeah, I was underwhelmed. They definitely seem to be leaning into like the bonkers weapon design that they created or that they had for Far Cry New Dawn. Like I saw like one of the guns is basically like a CD shooter, and it's like playing Macarena, and then it's shooting like they're
God.
I'm trying to, because like they're
so
not the people behind Just Cause, but it feels like they're trying to make a Just Cause kind of game, or it feels like they're trying to be like a more edgy like Insomniac, because Insomniac clearly has a ton of fun with their weapons and stuff as well, but like. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't do a lot for me. I didn't watch it like as it was airing with a whole bunch of people, so I wasn't like around for the conversation as it was happening that you were kind of alluding to, of people reacting in real time to it and stuff. I watched it, that night or the next day or something like that, and I was just like, yeah, it's isn't doing anything for me. But I also like I don't know what they could have shown that would have done something for me, just because I know what to expect from a Far Cry game. I know they're not going to detour from the formula too crazily or anything like that. So it's just going to be like, hey, yeah, you're going to be going out there and you're going to be like, it looks beautiful, but it's also going to be on it. It's another cross-gen game. So like, I don't know how well it's going to look, because they have to make part of it for PS4 at least, and Xbox One. So yeah, that's Far Cry. Any final thoughts on Far Cry before we dive into some of the others?
No, I'm done. I'm done taking a fat dump on it.
Yeah.
Like, just like I'm beyond disappointed at this point that like they have taken no lessons from the past to make this game, and it feels soulless at this point.
Yeah. You got, as I mentioned earlier, you got the Dying Light package. So we had a little unboxing. Actually, that might have been in the other video we recorded. We got a Dying Light package last week in the lead up to their kind of announced date, or their release date trailer / re-reveal. We haven't shown this game in a couple of years. Let's reintroduce it to people. You got a little package. We did an unboxing video up on the site that you can go check out. What were your thoughts on the Dying Light 2? 7 to 8 minutes that we got of Dying Light 2?
Excited. I'm really excited for it. As somebody who, I never played the original Dying Light, it was just kind of always in the periphery. And now I'm actually going to be making a Let's Play series for that nerdy site for us to be putting up to... I'm not going to be streaming it. So it's not going to be streamed. It's just going to be raw Let's Plays for that nerdy site of me playing Dying Light 1.
Okay. This is good to know. It's good to hear that we're doing this. I'm learning.
Did I not mention that?
I don't think so. I don't think I had heard anything about this.
I think I mentioned it in the video, and then I forgot to follow up with you saying, "Hey, I had this idea while I was recording the video. I'll record a Let's Play of me playing through all that." So there we go.
I watched the video. I don't remember you saying that. So you may have edited it out or something. But cool.
It's possible. It might have been too. Yeah, it might have been too close to. There were some edits that I made because I was short on time, and I also was just
there was definitely a moment where you clearly went off to something because you cut something out, and then you just came back in with, but I digress, and then you went off. So I was like, oh, I wonder what he cut out there that came back to the I digress.
I rarely cut things entirely out.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was like, I need to cut this out, just because it's pointless to have it in here, and it's just it's way too much personal information about me.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about it.
But Dying Light, I mean, I Dying Light. None of these are my kind of game. I have Dying Light. My sister, I think, gave me a copy that she got, at some point. I just they fall in the camp of too spooky for me. So, I almost reached out to our friend Josh, who's doing some PR for it and stuff. With because he was if you have any questions, reach out to us. And I almost reached out with is there a non-spooky mode that I could play of this game? But I know you enjoy it. I know Logan in particular loves the original Dying Light, and he's been very excited about Dying Light 2 stuff. So
I like the idea, and I've always really wanted to play a game with this idea of, hey, the apocalypse happened, society's crumbled. What's going on? What are you going to do to survive? What are you here to do? And I like that there's a bit of a mystery with some family stuff for the main character. They're an actual, once again, main character, even though you're in first-person perspective. Take some goddamn notes, Ubisoft. But no, I like that. I like that this is you have to make really difficult decisions at certain points about who you're going to support.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there is I dig it. I love it when you're we got factions. We got this idea of it being you need to be parkouring because the ground belongs to the dead. The day belongs to the day, and the skies belong to man. The night and the ground belongs to the dead.
Yeah.
If you stay on the ground, you will die.
Yeah,
I like that.
Because this basically the premise of this is, and I don't know where the first one fell in terms of the timeline of things, but this one I think said it's 15 years since basically the apocalypse began, and they really kind of lean into new society is being built on the ruins of the old society, and it is at the tops of buildings are little towns that have been constructed around there, and
I love it. It's very have you ever studied or ever learned about the archaeological efforts regarding the city of Troy?
I mean, if I have, it was back in high school and stuff. So it's
So quick summary: where people believe the city of Troy, the mythical city from the Iliad, is located. They don't know if it actually is there or rather, they believe it's there, but they don't know which one it is because the city that they believe that Troy is was built, like the original city was built long before Troy existed, and then they continued to build on the ruins of it afterwards, to the point where there is like layers of city, like different cities that you get to, and like it's bonkers, wild, awesome stuff. But I very much, when they showed we're building it on top, and they're literally building it vertically on top of Old Society, just love it, love that.
I like even when you started talking about it, I immediately think of, like, again, growing up here in Phoenix, like I remember learning about how like we are built basically, like our canal system is built off of the old Hohokam canals, of the kind of the indigenous tribes out here, that lived out here in the middle of the desert in a time where like that was not the best call, but they figured out how to make it work through irrigation efforts.
It's interesting, the Hohokam, because yes, like the Hohokam before us, the Hohokam, like, and it's important to note, Hohokam was no longer a tribe by the time Western settlers got here. Like even early settlers, like the priests and stuff that came in and settled, they were already long gone. However, unlike other tribes that have become extinct because of war or famine, or what people might think, oh well, they're out in the middle of the desert, they have these canals, something must have happened. It's actually likely because of commerce and trade, that they saw their young leave to go to these other populated areas for work, and so they slowly, like their areas eventually like just had nobody living there. So because there's no signs of warfare or destruction, so when the settlers came to the not Phoenix, it's really more in Mesa, Scottsdale, and other, like the eastern side of the valley. There's massive canal structures, and they were clayed, like they were done with clay, and now we've gone in and paved over them to use them again, and it's really cool to like look back and think like this entire land like was functional and totally working, and just like people are gone now, and we came in and built on top of it. Which is just fascinating. Like how many times it's happened it's like with London. London is like, most of London is built on top of the ruins of old London. During the Great London Fire, where like they're just like they built on top of it. That's what humanity does. Yep. And it's so cool to kind of like have that as an aspect to it, and I'm just super excited for it. I'm everything I saw, I loved. If you thought it was weird that the voice actor was one of the hosts of it, don't be. That guy's awesome. He's a voice actor. He streams regularly, actually. He does a lot of streaming, and he's an anime and video game voice actor. He's awesome.
Do you know who it is?
I love him. Off the top, let me pull this up here real quick.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that was the case, or because I wasn't paying that much attention to it.
Jonah Scott.
Who?
Jonah Scott.
Okay.
Jonah Scott. He's Legoshi in Beastars, and he also plays Joe in Skate the Infinity.
There you go. Cool. So very excited for Dying Light, or you guys are. I will stay away from that with a 10-foot pole, because spooky boo. But a game that I will be hopping into that we also saw was Horizon Forbidden West, which just looks goddamn gorgeous. I'm very excited to hop into that. I love it was one I had like a work meeting like when the original showcase was going on. So I didn't get to watch it live with everybody. But then I booted it up on my PS5 and watched the 4K like YouTube footage and was like, oh my god, this game is going to look so amazing. I love the use of color in what they showed off. They did basically like an seemingly an unbroken like segment of gameplay of like 10 to 15 minutes of the game.
Looks so good.
And it looks so good that whoever was doing the gameplay, capturing the gameplay, did a great job of like doing those fun cinematic, like let's show off all of this cool stuff we've got here. But then also just did a great job making the combat look fun and exciting, and because those games are very fun and exciting, but like it could be very hard to show if you were like a first-time player or something, you're just going to be shooting the same arrow or whatever. Like the fact that they were changing up the tactics and the weapon types and stuff like that, they did a really good job of that. Like even playing with like the verticality of like, hey, I'm going to try and get away from this guy and climb this thing here, and then that thing is going to charge and destroy the environment that I'm on, and so then they kind of like glide down on their new Breath of the Wild, blah blah blah, whatever. But yeah, like seeing the I'm always going to call it the Oliphant because it very much reminded me of a Lord of the Rings Oliphant. But like seeing that as a new enemy type was really cool, and just seeing how like seemingly the tribal or the raiders are working in tandem with the robots in San Francisco area. It was really cool. Just seeing like even San Francisco landmarks like the Transamerica building or Lombard Street and obviously the Golden Gate Bridge.
As two people who have like walked around San Francisco quite a bit. Actually, the first day we met, you and I walked around almost the entirety of San Francisco.
Yep.
Which is a wild thing to think about. When you look at it, you're like, well, it's only a 9x9, right?
6x6.
But that 6x6.
6 miles by 6 miles. Yeah.
And we walked through almost every district because of somebody messing up the like Google Maps.
Yeah, somebody didn't know how far distances were.
Well, they had it on car setting instead of walk setting, so it's like a 5-minute drive. 4 hours.
Yeah.
4.5 hours later, we're still walking through San Francisco. One of the best days of my life, though. Just a bunch of us there hanging out in San Francisco, making a pilgrimage to Underdogs. Was just like what, and getting to experience a city like that was so phenomenal. So seeing those landmarks like really like hit like not home for me, I guess that isn't the right way to put it. Like it's that same effect. Like it did hit me pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I like that. I love it. I love seeing.
I remember in the first game, like in the late game area where you're kind of in the like Arizona, Colorado, Utah, like Four Corners-esque region, like looking out over the desert and being like, that's like it's cool that there's a game that's taking place near me because Arizona is not typically a setting for games. Like I can think of that, and like Fallout New Vegas has like a sliver of Arizona in it.
Mojave, yeah. No, it's just like we don't normally get to see things go there, but also so we're talking about Horizon. We just got finished talking about Far Cry 6. It felt like last time when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, there was a rise in the question of cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
In regards to American indigenous cultures and the way that the inspiration for a lot of where Horizon Zero Dawn came from does have a lot of links to what essentially, I've said something about this before, and somebody's corrected me on the term that I used, but essentially, like culturally, like Bronze to Iron Age, culturally equivalent societies. So whether that is the indigenous peoples of the Americas, or if we're talking the like pre like the Bronze and Iron era, like age eras of Mesopotamia to Assyria to like early Macedonia, pre like Grecian Macedonia. When you're talking about like these early civilizations that have like are out of the infancy of civilization and now have formed true actual populated civilizations. What's your like? I've often been like, you're not wrong on that. Like you're 100% not wrong. Like there's clear things taken from here, but it's my struggle has always been a lot of the iconography and a lot of the things that a lot of people are saying belong to the indigenous peoples is you're not wrong. Like they clearly they were inspired by especially Aztecs in regards to One of the tribes, the Sun Tribe, in there. But I've always seen it as like to claim cultural appropriation feels weird because those are things shared between other cultures of that same like technology / cultural eras, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, it looks like an article is more or less confirming this. I think one of the reasons that that blew up a little bit around the time of Horizon Zero Dawn, it was because I think one of the narrative designers of the game basically kind of like poo-pooed the criticism of that instead
which
of
which I did not think was fair or at all.
Because it originally kind of spawned off of a Native American writer kind of like putting out a Medium essay talking about the use of a lot of that iconography kind of thing, and then
especially focusing on Aloy being a white, like a redheaded white female.
Yeah. And so I think that's like, whereas the narrative designer should have said, that is absolute, like, I understand this and take in this criticism, and here's what our thinking was, and here's our approach, and here if we consulted with people or not. Like, I think that would have been a better way to respond as opposed to like dismissing it like I think they did.
The way they dismissed it just always felt like she's raising like real concerns about like the author was raising real concerns about like this can like clearly this is like the Aloy is a great character, well written character, the game's great, but like we have to be willing to have these conversations, and the way that she like these issues were dismissed, like I said, I've struggled with it as well because like I think from their perspective, like from the perspective of looking at like the cultural tones and nuances as well as like a lot of inspirations coming from it, like at what point do we call it appropriation, at what point do we call it an homage or an inspiration?
Mm-hmm.
Is where I often find myself, like I look back on when I was really taught more about cultural appropriation when I was in college. My freshman year, I was in a class with somebody who basically looked at me and said, if you wear my culture as a costume, like that's appropriation. Mm-hmm. That's really messed up. And then I look at, okay, well, if you say, well, this is inspiration from it because, and it, like I mentioned earlier, these things don't just belong to a singular culture or a singular region. They're often shared as like this is part of human cultural evolution as we go through it. Like definitely Aztecs, like a lot of the Aztec influence was found in that Sun Empire, but for a lot of other things also. Like, but at the same time, I do not want to discredit or discount or belittle the perspective of people of color, people of indigenous descent, who see this and feel something has been taken from them, mm-hmm. or feeling something about their culture has been appropriated by some, and let's be fair here, a bunch of white people in Europe.
Yeah.
Because
that's they don't have the best track record of handling that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Guerrilla Games happens to be located in an area of the world that has problems of doing this sort of a thing in the past. So,
I mean, like one of the most recent examples, obviously, we also had was like Cyberpunk being like, hey, maybe they shouldn't be diving into all of the ethnic racial overtones that they dive into in Night City. But I've also mentioned earlier that that's like that homogenization is but once again we mentioned they had a lot of the problems and tropes and concepts about a problematic behavior in cyberpunk genre, mm-hmm. but they didn't say anything about it. Yeah,
I think the way that you touched on it when we talked about this months ago was like, this is an incredibly important thing that's part of the genre, but it's supposed to be used as a critique and a critical talking point about reflection on like what cyberpunk, of course, being a punk genre, means that it's supposed to be a reflection on our actual society and how we view things. And cyberpunk's not just meant to be an aesthetic; it's actually supposed to be something that makes you think and feel.
Yeah.
And they did not do that with that. So in that same vein, yeah.
Yeah, and
100%.
it's and so to tie that back to Horizon Zero Dawn, I thought they did a really good job. Like when I was playing the game with that narrative a little bit kind of in the back of my head of like is like how do I feel about seeing what can very easily be kind of looked at as like Native American imagery, all over that game. And I really enjoyed that given the events that kind of lead to where that game is, that like there was a cultural reset and that led to these elements of tribalism kind of coming up with their own, gods and their own kind of like explanations for what happened because they don't know, because they're not diving into the the places that Aloy is going to like see the history of the world around it. And so like I appreciate there was like an element of history repeating itself in that. And so I thought like I even like kind of in the context of this conversation, I thought that was them taking a statement or like making a statement about like here's how our post-apocalyptic world handles these kinds of things. It does, look back at, the most basic elements of some of those, the religions and kind of the belief systems that, burgeoned in some of those kind of early cultures. And like lets them kind of rise back to the surface again because, those didn't just come from nothing. Those came from, we see the sun. The sun must be a god. So like, let's dive into that. So, so like I like that they do that, and having that like reflected as a visual representation is an easy shorthand to connect those dots for people. But I fully understand and appreciate. And again, a couple white guys on a podcast, like, take anything we say with a grain of salt regarding this. But
I don't even think we get a grain of salt.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, call us out if we're just completely wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
But yeah, when I played that game,
hit us up, let us know.
Yeah, when I played the game, I appreciated that element of it, and that like the conversation that the game has itself a little bit, but it was more like the conversation I had in my head, and what I was putting on top of that, I thought was a cool conversation. But again, I fully appreciate and absolutely respect if other people, do feel it's appropriation, do feel it's insensitive or inappropriately handled. And I'll be interested to see kind of like the fact that the first thing they're showing about the game looks more like it's ripped out of the Two Towers than it does of like indigenous cultures or something like that. It leads me to think maybe they're taking that as feedback and being like, okay, let's try and like and not make it like a 1-to-1 kind of comparison to avoid those kinds of negative connotations. But yeah, I think I mean like all that aside, like I'm super excited about Horizon. I think.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So am I. I wanted to have that conversation because I saw it on Twitter earlier. And I wanted to have that conversation. I've been wanting probably to have that conversation for a long time now, actually. But like having. Oh, another thing also. People need to like get over Aloy's look. Like what?
Yeah, I don't want to give that.
She looks like a little bit older version of who she was in the previous game. Get over yourself.
Yeah, the tweet that's going around today as we're recording this of like somebody has like showing that the current Aloy with like a mock-up of like a pretty gorgeous glammed up like that looks like they basically just put Kate Upton's face on Aloy's.
It's creepy.
On the Aloy model.
It's like creepy and gross and weird.
Yeah, it's uber like, and the guy tweeting it is basically clearly like, I mean like his freaking handle was like alpha male or something stupid like that. So gross. Like it's the thing that like I think is the dumbest bit about that tweet is he's complaining about the masculine nature of the female characters, and he compares the character to Ellie when he clearly means Abby from The Last of Us Part 2. And I'm just like I don't even want to give the person credence to like quote tweet this, despite seeing a ton of people on my feed quote tweet it and just continue to amplify that dumbass's voice. So, but yeah, I think she looks fine. I think
Abby, like outside of her characterization and story elements, I enjoyed playing as Abby. Abby was a badass.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, and Aloy will be too. Like, I'm
there you go.
The especially because like for like 90% of this game, I'm going to be controlling from behind Aloy and shooting bows and arrows and stuff. I'm not going to be looking at her face. I don't really care what she looks like as a character. I'm not like if this person is one of those people on the internet that needs to like get their rocks off to an
Gross.
Animated video game character.
She's like 16, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even diving into. I don't remember how old she is or whatever, but like, it's still like
on top of everything else.
Dude, porn exists. Just Google that. Like, you can find.
Get away
that kind
from
of
our
stuff
video
out there.
games, man.
Settle down.
Get away from our video games. Leave our video games the pure and Christian way that they were always meant to be.
Yes.
Not on my Christian Minecraft server, thank you very much.
Last big trailer that came out. Anything from the Sonic showcase? I don't know what your take on Sonic is. If you're one of the
Sonic games are trash.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
I've always felt that they're games about running to the side of the screen and mitigating your speed while at the same it's just like it's. Also, the hitbox mechanics in Sonic games are usually flat out garbage. Mm-hmm. It's fine. They're fine. If you like them, great. I hope you enjoy them.
So you don't care about the 30th anniversary of Sonic. Got it.
I know. I care about the 30th anniversary of Sonic because we saw the Sonic movie and it was awesome.
Yeah. We're getting a sequel.
We're getting a sequel. I like that Sonic exists. I like that people like him. I like that the games are enjoyed by people. I don't want to just be like poo-poo on Sonic, like, oh, Sonic shouldn't exist. Sonic's a great character, and he's a lot of fun, and he's going to be doing his Sonic thing, and that's great. Mm-hmm. But like as far as like I was watching Kind of Funny review the reveal. And they're like trying to like piece together. Well, this Sonic looks a little bit like this here. Yeah. He has like this design here, and I'm. This is beyond me. I'm just happy there's a new Sonic. That's cool.
Tim definitely goes crazy with the Sonic love.
Tim
but
and
speaking of Kind of Funny, where do you fall on the like? Is Sonic who's the more popular IP, Sonic or Legend of Zelda?
It's Sonic.
I mean, I know, right? It's absolutely Sonic. Like
if you see some if a person looks at you playing Legend of Zelda and says, "Oh, so you're that Zelda character, huh?"
Yeah.
Like if people still call Link Zelda, then yeah, Sonic's more popular. Get over it. Like, don't get me wrong. Which game would I prefer to play? A Zelda game for sure. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that Sonic isn't one of the most famous video game mascots of all time.
Yeah.
He's up there with friggin' Mario.
Yep. Yeah. No, I thought that was the dumbest debate that was going on, and the fact that like on Greg's Twitter poll that like Legend of Zelda beats Sonic out 2-1, I was like, well, this is a stupidly biased in the wrong way like poll like audience, because obviously like, and that's why I tweeted out basically just the Google Trends analysis since the beginning of Google effectively, and like apart from when Breath of the Wild came out, I think like Sonic has always been ahead of Zelda. So yeah, the fact that there's a movie, the fact that there have been multiple TV shows about Sonic and stuff, and yeah, Sonic is easily the bigger and more popular IP. I'd love to see Legend of Zelda get that level of treatment, but it does not. It has not. So that is going to do it for the trailer stuff. I guess lastly, just a quick there was a tease for Dragon Quest XII that was basically just a logo treatment. Cool. Meh. Dragon Quest XII is coming. Hooray. The biggest exciting thing from the Dragon Quest stuff was they're remaking Dragon Quest III in the HD 2D engine that they use for Project Octopath Traveler and stuff like that. So that's going to be really cool. And immediately me and John Phipps, aka formerly Mr. Megative, now he's Game Dad JP, I think. Two of the biggest Final Fantasy VI fans on the internet were immediately like, if they can do this for Dragon Quest, they can do this for Final Fantasy. Please give us Final Fantasy VI remastered in the HD 2D engine. That would be so cool. I would love that. So,
No.
screw you, Cameron. Screw you, you ass. Yeah. And then they also there's also mobile games and stuff coming to Dragon Quest, whatever.
Who cares?
So where are you at then? Here we are. We spent an hour talking about those 4 or 5 whatever trailers it was. So how far are you in Mass Effect at this point, Cam?
I'm in playing Mass Effect 2 right now on my personal playthrough. So tomorrow is the start of Mass Effect Mondays for me, where I play Mass Effect on Mondays. Mm-hmm. Usually plan on taking care of.
And where do you do this, Cameron?
I do this on twitch.tv/RevCabbott. That's RevCabbott. Thank you very much. It's my Twitch channel. I'm streaming there. Usually stream from 6 to 8, maybe a little bit later, Pacific time right now because of where we're at in Arizona, time-wise. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've pretty much decided it'll be a femshep this time because I get to I'll be able to romance Garrus on screen.
I mean, not until Game 3, but spoilers.
Game 2, but yeah.
I don't think you can romance him in Game 2, can you? I thought like him and Tally you couldn't until Game 3, but
no, it's Game 2 that you can start romancing them.
Okay.
And oh yeah, the romance with Garrus, it's like,
all right, weirdo.
It's too nice. Garrus is hot and awesome, and I don't care who knows it. Okay?
All right, we're back to the conversation about people who need to get off on video game characters.
No, I don't know. It has nothing to do with that. I don't want Trevor. I can't have this conversation with you. I can't. I'm not emotionally or mentally prepared right now to be able to discuss why Garrus Vakarian is more important as a video game character than so many people I know in real life are to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. We will not talk about that.
Yeah.
So you're playing through Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2. Playing through it right now. I picked up the Omega characters. I basically finished out all of Omega. And now I'm I'm doing a lot of, let's be real, I'm doing a lot of surveying.
Yeah.
I'm going to all the different, I love Mass Effect 2's exploration feature where it's mass relay mass relay systems interconnected, no problem with that. But if you want to go outside of it, you have to have fuel, the launch probes, everything with that. I'm super into. I love that aspect of it. The changes they've made so that it scans faster is awesome. Yeah,
yep. That was probably my favorite update in Mass Effect 2. Yeah. I ended up finishing that game with 100,000 plus EZO and 300 to 400,000 plus of every other element. Far more than I needed, but I was just it's very Zen-like, just going through planet by planet and scanning until you get down to poor or depleted.
I'm on my way. So I recruited Archangel and the Scientist, and now I'm on my way to recruit the Warlord.
Okay.
Which I'm being vague because I don't want to get too into spoilery territory. But I'm on my way to do that because that way I will then have the quote-unquote Warlord character with Archangel, and it'll just be the way it always should be in every Mass Effect game.
and that will be your crew moving forward.
The way God intended a Mass Effect party to be formed.
Fair enough. Yeah. I finished the second game, and I'm now.
Everybody make it out?
Huh?
Everybody make it out?
Yep.
Nice.
Not the first attempt. First attempt. One of them dumb characters. I did everything in the game.
Well, there's some RNG on some parts.
Yep.
Too.
And so because I didn't send one of those characters back or whatever, they're basically the first character on the list of hey, if we're gonna kill somebody, we're gonna kill this person basically. And so I'm going through the end dialogue and they're yeah, not everybody made it out. I was who the fuck didn't make it out? And then I had to wait and see in the cutscenes and be oh god damn it, let me reload the save and replay it.
How much of the overall crew
all
there's
all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was basically one of the player characters didn't make it, but everybody else did. And so I was like, well, that's not going to stand. So I like reloaded the mission, changed like one or two of the decisions I made throughout the mission itself, and everybody came out on the other end. So I got the platinum trophy for it, and moved on into Mass Effect 3, where I have gone through kind of the first showdown of cultures, i.e., like the basically like the Turians and the Krogans kind of bit. I'm through that chunk now, and I'm about to go into kind of the feud between the Quarians and the Geth. So I'm right now I'm doing like all of the side quests before I dive into that next like real main story mission. So I'm about halfway through the Mass Effect 3. And depending on how much more time I put into it in this lovely 3-day weekend we're in, I might finish it up basically, tomorrow. And then it'll come down to like, okay, do I want to now do do I immediately want to hop in and do a FemShep full renegade run on like insanity difficulty to like clean up those last couple trophies for like the collection? Or will I be, because like at this point, I just need to do everything in Mass Effect 3 and I will have the platinum for that one as well. I've already gotten all the like, warp 100 shields or whatever. I've gotten those potentially missable trophies done. So at this point, it's just like, okay, finish doing all of the side quests and all that stuff. And I'll get my platinum on that one. And so, yeah, then it'll be like, okay, I'm annoyed because of who I'm romancing in this run. I did not get the trophy for like romance somebody across all 3 games or romance somebody across like 2 of the games because of when that romance played out in my game. Again, keeping it vague for spoiler reasons or whatever. So if I want to get those last trophies on like an insanity run, I would need to do that and, match up with different people each game or something like that anyway. So it'll depend on like if I'm going to do that, or as we kind of touched on, maybe I'll just be like, I'm good bouncing off Mass Effect for a little while, and I'm going to play some Final Fantasy 4 or 14 online, and just enjoy that. So, but yeah, I'm having a great time with Mass Effect. Continues to be beautiful. I love, like, even I tweeted this out the other day, like or yesterday, I guess. Even with the number of times I've played through this game, I love that I'm still catching new things. Like, what I tweeted out was effectively like when Rex talks to characters about really having a quad, it only is now dawning on me what he's meaning when he says that. Because any other time I was like, it's a weird thing. Like, why are you talking about their quadriceps? Whatever. But that is not the reference he is making. So, yeah, if you know Krogan anatomy, and I just had never pieced that together and had a, so like he said that to one of the characters like last night, and I was like, I just now got that, 10 years on or whatever it has been. So yeah, having a great time with that, just enjoying, again, being back with these characters, getting these moments with these characters. They're just such like a joyous like they're so well written and oftentimes so fleshed out, even like ancillary side characters and stuff. I love like random people popping back up on the Citadel and being like, hey, yeah, I remember you from the first game, and kind of getting a little bit of closure to their stories and stuff like that. So yeah, Mass Effect, real good, really enjoying the Legendary Collection, and loving that it's all there in one place to play. Any other final thoughts on Mass Effect before we move on?
No, I'm good. I right before we start podcasting, I actually finished up Kasumi's loyalty mission. So
nice. Part of it is I played through because of like when I played Mass Effect 2, and then like when I would go back and replay Mass Effect 3. Like I've done all of the like the DLC and the extended side stuff. But I like it's the realization that there are a ton of people that haven't and that never met Kasumi because she was a DLC character that came out later, and Zaid that came out later. Yeah. And so like realizing that people
they're really cool characters.
Yeah. I love her side mission. Is it like her loyalty mission in the game is just a ton of fun, and then like when she returns in Mass Effect 3, like I almost feel bad because like I like so many of the characters from the whole series really, but I do get like set in my ways of like, well, like I like having these two characters because their powers are complementing mine really well, so I don't really change up my parties all that much. And I feel like so I'm missing out on like fun little banter that other characters might have had if I took them out on such and such a mission. And Kasumi is one of those I love her as a character, but I never really liked her power set all that much, so I didn't really ever do much with her in the game. And so that's like a minor bummer and stuff. But yeah, Mass Effect, real good game, real good games, and enjoying them. Also, speaking of Mass Effect, my episode of Massively Affected went out last week with Josh Silverman. You can go check that out. I'll try and remember to like include the link for that in the description of this episode, because it was a real fun one that I did. I recorded that with him a few months ago, back when I was replaying through the games on Xbox in advance of the Legendary Collection. So let us throw it back over to you then, Cam. Tell us about the Shadowbringers patch of Final Fantasy XIV.
Well, Shadowbringers has come to an end as far as the story goes. It's come to a very climactic point that will be ushering in the end of ages, the end of an era, the end of the world in Final Fantasy XIV's world, that it'll be significantly worse than any other astral or umbral calamity. It's extremely exciting to see the fulfillment of a 10-year story of these the fight between the Ashians and the Scions come to a head. Is really, really cool. It's really awesome to see. It ended pretty much perfectly the way you wanted it to. It was just awesome. And so being able to play through that, being able to just make my way through there, is something that I've had so much fun with it. I've had so much fun doing it. And now you're getting into Final Fantasy XIV again. You're putting your feet back in the water on that. There are people all over the place saying, "Oh, hey, I wanted to try out Final Fantasy XIV," and getting to see that that happen has just been awesome. To see more and more people get sucked into it, especially when they get towards the later parts of the story. That, I love seeing those on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. So I know we've talked about the patch updates and stuff here and there. Is it new quest missions that you're getting?
Yeah,
there's a handful of new quest missions that come out kind of with each patch that advance the story a little bit more, and then in this case, did it end up with a cool cinematic or cutscene or something like that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely set up to make a point going forward about so Endwalkers has more story and more speaking parts than the others will all have put together, I think they said, at FanFest. And so we're looking at it being a very robust, well-voiced, and probably often voiced out story. But in regards to the actual, where things are at right now, in regards to that, it's not really a... What was I saying? Sorry. I lost my train of thought up for a moment.
You were talking about the future of the game being much more voiced, but the end scenes here.
Yes, sorry. So there's been a trend. That's where I got lost on it. Okay, because I started thinking I was talking about something else. From the beginning of the game, where A Realm Reborn has quite a significant part of it is voice in comparison to other MMOs. But ever since then, it has progressively gotten more and more voiced. But what has been very typical is in patch notes for patch updates with story updates, oftentimes those are not voiced. For the most part, almost everything in this latest one was voiced, which is to be kind of expected. That's usually how these latest ones go. But to see them doubling down even more on more voice talent, bringing in just more, more opportunities for this world that already feels so real at times to feel even more fleshed out. So, the patch was great. The encounter is not a dungeon or a raid. It's a very specialized type of end of encounter that gave us the ability to play as other members of the Science of the Seventh Dawn again, which has been great. And it was just a fun, great time overall. Super happy with it. Can't wait for Shadowbringers. But I will wait because I have to make more money so that when...
You mean Endwalker?
Endwalker, yeah, sorry. When Endwalker, so when a house can come up in Ishgard, I can buy it.
I am continually seeing people now tweet their frustrations about never being able to buy property in Final Fantasy. And
that's a long-standing
Oh
problem.
yeah, I know, but because more and more people on my feed are getting into Final Fantasy XIV, I'm seeing it that much more.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm immediately getting those flashbacks to a couple years ago when that was a conversation in our little Discord about the game. So I can appreciate that. And yeah, as we touched on, I'm hopping back into it. We right before this, I hopped back in for the first hour or so, and yeah, I'll continue to kind of like re-tutorialize myself through the game. And the fact that I'm playing a DPS character this time around instead of a tank character is already, in my mind, kind of taking a little bit more of the burden off of like what I'm doing when I get into eventually those multi-person encounters and stuff. But yeah, it's like Final Fantasy XIV is a testament to a great team that clearly loves what they're doing, what they put into those games, and the ability to tell a story over 10 years, 10, 12 years of time or whatever. Yeah, I look forward to kind of eventually, fingers crossed, eventually catching up. When I did like re-up my subscription, I was like, well, I don't know how much longer, how much time I'm going to put into it, but whatever, I'll just sign up for a 6-month batch and and we'll go from there. I'm pot committed for at least some time now, or I'm just out that money. But yeah, Final Fantasy XIV, gonna be a lot of cool new stuff over the next not over the next few months, but in about 5 months' time when Endwalker comes out. Gonna be a whole new batch of stuff for that game for people to enjoy. Lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about Mighty Ducks Game Changers. This is a show on Disney Plus that Cam and I did that D Plus show episode of back at the beginning of April to kick off what ended up becoming an impromptu Mighty Ducks month on the show. Did you ever go back and watch any more episodes of the show after that, Cam?
Yeah, I watched up to, I think, episode 3 or 4.
Okay.
So
I
have to go back and finish watching it, but yeah.
Yeah, so episode 3, I believe, was when Bombay basically like came clean about like what had happened basically between the last movie and here.
And like the predicament that he got himself put in.
Yeah.
And like all of that. The reveal that like Bombay hates hockey, not because he actually hates it. He hates what hockey has become to the part where like you can't just like help out one of your players like that. Like his reasoning for why he hates hockey at that point and like why he's so bitter and upset about it rang really true to me, especially as somebody who supports student athlete salaries.
Yeah.
And in regards to that aspect of it, just very, very much that way. But I really enjoyed it from what I was watching. Just seeing Emilio Estevez as Bombay again is so great. Seeing, I just think that the whole don't bothers are like the entire concept is just fun and great. Just digging it.
Yeah, I really liked what the season ended up becoming. It's 10 episodes, and as I kind of mentioned to like you and Logan in our Slack channel, like I think it does a really good job of recapturing what makes the first Mighty Ducks a really good movie even today. It does focus a lot more on the kids than the original Mighty Ducks does, but even Bombay's kind of story is told effectively and very well over the course of the 10 episodes, and it is kind of like him refinding that love of the game and that love of kind of coaching and whatnot. And because the show is told over 10 episodes instead of a hour and a half movie or whatever, each of the kids even gets their own little arcs or their own little time to shine in the show. And one of the things I loved that I when you and I sat down and recorded that D Plus show, I talked about like it seems like there's way too few kids on this team. And I like said, they could do something like Pitch Perfect where they add a couple kids to like flesh out the squad, even though those kids are like never going to do anything. And they end up doing that over the course of the show. Like they add a couple quote check kids that they end up calling the checkmates, that are pretty much just glorified extras. I think maybe they say one or two things throughout the entire season, but they're basically just a couple other people to fill out the ice, to fill out the bench when when there are kids not on the ice and stuff like that. And so like I love that they ended up like effectively planning for that. There's an episode mid-season that is very much like the reunion episode where they get a handful of the kind of the original Ducks to come back for a gala event kind of thing, and there's a fun little reunion sequence that happens there, as well as kind of like the new Ducks meeting the old Ducks or whatever. Had a good time with that, and yeah, they just like they told a fun story over the course of the series, and I had a good time with it. I think some of the kids are really cool, have some really stand-up moments. Some of the kids didn't go the way I was expecting them to go, but that's not like a bad thing. It was just like they were set up, and I thought they were going to do, one thing with like, I think, is it Libby? No. Kimmy? What the girl who's like the LARPer kind of girl, like in that first episode, like she, I thought was going to like become like a rage monster or something like that. And she like, they just don't really end up doing that, but she has a nice little arc with one of the other girls on the team. They become like really good friends, and
that's good.
And yeah, I think they just kind of all get their fun little moments to shine. Even kind of like the Lauren Graham kind of character has a good arc, a rise and fall kind of little thing that she does over the course of the season that I think was a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing what they do with that, in a season 2. The guy you really liked from Letterkenny just continues to be great whenever he shows up on screen. He is a ton of fun as kind of the snarky coach of the new Ducks, and just being like a dick, but like a funny dick. And
well, it's like he's being a dick, like, because that's his, like, that's a great character that he can play. Is he's not like that in Letterkenny. In Letterkenny, he's a big dumb himbo with like a heart of like decency, and just like being like just a good dude. But like from the episodes I've seen, like it's very clear like he is invested in being a coach, but he knows what the demands are for his actual like team are, and like he said some harsh words, but I will never forget at the end of episode 1 when he says, "All right, so we're going to be full contact. This is what it's going to look like," and then plays that, and just like looks at the kids that he goes, "You're too small." Like the kid that he told at the beginning of the episode, "You're just too small. You're not like you're not a better player, so that like it really hurts. It's going to hurt you." And the kid would be like, "But just let me play." And he goes, I can't let you play." And then he shows why he's like, "I can't let you play because it's full contact. You're going to get your head rocked." And so I've been really into the like the aspect that like nobody's like really a villain. It's just good old fashioned the real villain are the parents that we meet along the way, for sure.
Even the parents, a lot of the parents get like weird little redemption arcs, I think, in fun and interesting ways. And going back to the Coach T character, later in the season, he has some kind of like some one-on-one scenes with Gordon, and they were some of my favorite scenes of the series.
Stoked. Okay, I'm stoked to finish it.
Of like what his coaching looks like against Gordon's coaching, and Gordon just kind of like messing with him in return and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun there.
Yes.
To be had. Yeah.
Because he's literally like let's be real. Coach T's like his idol's probably Gordon Bombay, obviously. So.
I mean, yeah.
I'm excited. I want to get to those.
Watch the show and find out. But yeah,
I want to get to those episodes now. I'm stoked.
I really enjoyed it. Mighty Ducks Game Changers was a lot of fun for like what. It was one of those shows that I was like, oh, I guess that's a cool thing they're doing on Disney Plus. And then when I after like really getting super into Cobra Kai and what they had done kind of with the Karate Kid brand and stuff, I was like, oh, they're basically doing that with Mighty Ducks. That's really cool. And it does, like, it definitely doesn't go like as hard into it as Cobra Kai does, but it is another great example of like, here's how you can kind of like continue the legacy of that franchise in a much better way than D2 or D3 did, I think. So, check that out. I will be very curious to see, if they're able to, get other people back for, season 2 cameos and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a really cool, really good show. So check out Mighty Ducks Game Changers on Disney Plus if you're interested. And also check out that D Plus show with Cameron and I when we did that back at the beginning of April for that. I think that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. What do you want to give a shout out to this week, Cam?
I already gave an earlier shout out to my stream, so I won't do it this time. I do want to give a massive shout out, of course, to to a lot of people out there who are. I'm trying not to name names right now, but right now there is a lot of people of color, but particularly women of color, who have been dealing with some absolute garbage nonsense on Twitter and other social media platforms. And I'm not telling you to, what I'm trying to do is, if you see something, say something, and at the same time be there for your friends, be there for the people that you care about in your communities, your online communities, and when you see garbage, call it out. Just like the other day, I was busy all day long, and I came back to it, and I found some really heartbreaking tweets from some people who I really respect, and who I have a lot of I do have a personal relationship with one of the people that I'm referencing, but other people as well who've just been getting if you see people being unkind, if you see that sort of thing, don't be afraid to reach out to people to let them know that, hey, you have their back, you support them. I was disheartened to see what people had been going through, but I was in heart. I felt much more emboldened about by the actions of the people I know around those individuals who had their back and were there to support them. When I didn't have any idea of what was going on, and actually still don't for some of the issues, but. When you see people out there, especially people who are marginalized in this sphere of influence and in this industry, it's important and imperative that you speak out in regards to their mistreatment and demanding that people have common decency and respect towards other people. So I don't want to call out names because I don't. Some tweets were deleted from the people who were tweeting out that they had been under, I don't want to say under attack, but they had been, harassed. So I don't want to name names about people, because otherwise I'd be like, hey, this person has been having a tough time because of some garbage on the internet. Go give them some good positive vibes and love. They've deleted those tweets, so I don't feel comfortable naming them, but I do feel like it's imperative that, if you see something, say something, speak out. Have your friends back. We need to do better about supporting and protecting the marginalized groups of people within our industry here. And I know that's something that we try to do. Trevor and I both try to do. At least having their back, or at least being there as a source of support and comfort. And if you're listening to this part of the podcast, and if you think that this is you've been going through that tough time, don't be afraid to reach out, and don't think for a moment that we don't have your back, because we do. That's it.
Yeah. I have no idea what incidents you're referencing, but I stand by all.
I don't
of
even
it,
know.
absolutely.
I don't even know the core points of some of these incidents.
I mean, that's
I just
fair.
saw the
Like,
I saw the aftermath of it, and I'm just like, it broke my heart.
And that's I see those kinds of like so and so's getting abuse or something, you know, far too often. Unfortunately, it is you know a pathetic side effect of like you know dumbasses having access to Twitter, I guess. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, absolutely. Like uplifting those people as best we can. My personal, like, if I'm seeing the, harassment in tweets and stuff, I'm never going to be the guy that's going to like go in there and like pick fights in response to people. A lot of time I'm just going to like block people that are being assholes and never think about them again. But your point of like reaching out to the people who are being harassed and trying to, lift them up or say we're there for them. I fully stand by that. The last thing I would want though would be like, I DM them and say, hey, like I see you're taking some harassment. I'm so sorry. I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything. Like, and then they come and be like, well, you could like, tell these people to stop being assholes on the internet. Like I'm always wary of like that because people just use social media in different ways, and I don't want to step on toes or any of that kind of stuff like that. But I
hear where you're coming from, but yeah, my big thing was I was like, there's nothing that as somebody who has certain positions and privileges in regards to our society and the power that I have and the power dichotomy of being a white man, feeling powerless and incapable of helping the people I care about is one of like my biggest one of the biggest things that I struggle with is knowing I could have said something, or thinking, not even knowing, but thinking that I could have done something to help be more positive, or at least just be there for somebody. And then just kind of, it just broke my heart to see people have to deal with. I'm trying not to be specific at all about what I'm speaking on.
Yeah.
But if you
just
hear, like I mentioned,
if you shit.
Yeah, if you hear this and you think, oh, wow, I think Cameron's talking about he saw like what I've been going through. Yeah, I have been. And it breaks my heart. And I want you to know that I have your back. Because it's so fucking awful. And you are a person of infinite worth and value. And you bring so much to this space. You bring so much to this industry. And I don't want you to ever think for a moment that you do not. So...
Here. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and yeah, I have nothing really in particular to plug, so I will just kind of echo that sentiment of, take care of each other, be good to each other out there, leave the world a better place than it has been handed to us, and just try and be a good person. You follow everything we do over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, please, once again, rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite if you can. Every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. Like we said at the top, this month's early access episode is going to be a little bit of an experiment, but it's basically, part Let's Play, part podcast about Final Fantasy XIV Online. So you can check that out if you support us on Patreon. If not, it'll go up to everybody at the end of June. That's going to do it. So as always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.